I just had this moment where I was like, did I log into the right account? I did. This is good news. Hey, Bree, how are you? I was just saying, like, I had to check to make sure I logged into the right account. So I'm going to hang out and wait for folks to join. Hello, Breezy. Hey, Kathy. I'm looking to see when M joins us. I'm very excited about this. Hey, Soph. Oh, God, it's so fun to see you guys. How's your Monday going? Is it wet and rainy where everyone is? Probably not, because people are from all over. It happens to be really wet and rainy where I am at this moment. Not complaining. We're in the middle of like this giant drought. And I think, oh, yay, I see you, Em. Oh. And I just clicked the wrong thing because I'm not the brightest bulb in the box tonight. Hold on. There we go. Should work. Just sent out the invite. Very excited.
No, you did it. You're the brightest bulb.
I'm looking at it. I'm like, I'm trying to click, and I'm like, everything's so tiny and like so close together. Like, why is that?
This doesn't get any easier. It's like the more I do it, the more confused I get.
It's so true. We got a fun group with us tonight. I'm very excited as people join us.
On their
Hold on.
Your chat. I apologize.
You say that again. Sorry, I was turning up my volume because my volume's too low.
I was already in the chat trying to compliment my appearance, and I'm like, cut it out. This is not the place or time.
I love it. Absolutely love it. I love that people are joining us still. And I'm sure will we get to talk. Super fun group.
Oh, you know, I love
and
it.
So excited about this. I was like, what? Has enough time gone by? Can I bug them again?
Every day and it would be fine.
I'm going to take a chance. Maybe they'll be willing.
I usually am. It's the fun stuff.
Yay. It's, oh God, so much fun getting to hang out with you. I've made everybody at MEDA jealous that I get to do this tonight. I'm super excited. So here's a question for you. I'm wondering, so I was going to read your bio, and then I was like, I'm going to ask them if they want to actually introduce themselves, because sometimes when people read my bio, I'm like,
My bio, I feel really uncomfortable because it's like the most professional version of me that kind of people expect of me, not actually how I view myself. And I'm sure that's true for all of us that have one.
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
So, okay, normal M introduction. I'm M. I'm socially awkward, yet somehow decided to become a therapist. So I'm an art therapist by trade. I treat eating disorders in the queer community. I also do a lot of art, activism, and equity access and community education. Basically anything to make our lives in our bodies as good, as easy, as doable as possible. You'll probably find somewhere doing yelling about it, because yelling about it is my favorite thing.
Yes. Do I get to tell them that you also did our EndNote at our national conference? And never, so MEDA, for people who don't know, right, MEDA, it has been around since 1994. So a really long time. And we've had conferences almost that entire time. We've had a lot of conferences. And I don't know if Em knows this or not, but I don't think ever in the history of MEDA have we ever had evaluations come in where the person got 100% across the board. Like there was not one individual who scored the evaluation less than 100%. It was amazing. So many reasons why I'm super excited for people here on Instagram to also get to interact with you.
I don't know what to do with that information.
Isn't that cool? Carolyn and I were looking at it. We were like, I don't think that's ever happened before. Like,
well, I mean, I'm glad what I have to offer is what people need to hear right now. And when it's not my anymore. I am happy to watch someone else do it.
Of course. I just saw somebody, Rebecca's like, wait, 1994 was a really long time ago. From the standpoint of an eating disorder nonprofit, yes. From the standpoint of a human being being alive, no.
94 was yesterday for me, and in the work world, it was forever ago.
Yes. I'm not even going to tell people when I was born. So, you know. So, this will be a fun conversation. I know I definitely have lots of things that people have kind of written in and talked about and that people want to know and I want to know and that I can't wait to hear your thoughts about.
Cool.
But I know one of the things that we will obviously talk a lot about tonight is the LGBTQIA2S community. And there have been actually a couple people who wrote asking me what the 2S stands for. So I wonder if you wanted to let people know what that is.
Sure. So 2S means two spirit, and essentially it's the acronym that represents being trans, non-gender, non-conforming, specifically in communities, because actually being trans, non-conforming, historically documented, actually started in indigenous first. So we try to honor them by not only adding that in, but putting them first whenever we can.
Well, so of course I did that backwards then, right?
Most people do it that way. It's okay. And
I wasn't sure. I started out, yeah, it's a good conversation. So I like that. It's good to know that when I was actually trying to do the hashtag, I saw it both ways and I was like, oh gosh, I don't know which way is correct.
I mean, I spelled it wrong the first time I ever posted about it, and a colleague out and was like, hey, just so you know, I saw this in a training by an indigenous person. This is how they'd like it explained in the future. Cool.
Actually, I thought it might be my connection. A couple of people are saying that you're cutting in and out.
Is this better if I hold myself here?
Actually, yes.
I know exactly what that is. I was using you all. Oh no! Don't pause.
Oh. That makes you.
There we go.
I was like, that'll make it really comfortable for you, right? Oh wait, Carol says we both are, so maybe it's me.
Ooh. Well, I see you. I hear you.
I can hear you too.
Perfect. We'll just keep going and hope for the best.
Well, at least it'll record. So if we can hear each other, it should record like what we hear.
Perfect.
Anyway, so hopefully people, if you miss things, it sounds like since we can hear each other, it should really record okay. We had, and I've already shared this with you, but I'll read it for other people. I thought we had a really good, it's not really it's a question, but it's not a question. It's kind of more like an opinion that the person was seeking. And it is, the person wrote in stating, my friend is part of the LGBTQIA community and she's in treatment right now and got told by another patient that the whole community is wrong and that she doesn't believe that the community should even exist. The person who stated that the community was wrong did not get kicked out, although both this person and their friend believe that person should have gotten kicked out, that should have happened, although denying somebody life-saving treatment because of their belief is probably problematic as well. So they're seeking our opinion on that tonight.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have a personal opinion and a professional opinion. So my personal opinion is if you can't respect someone's right to exist, you shouldn't be in the space. Thank you, bye. Yes. And obviously as a therapist, I kind of agree with their statement of denying someone life-saving treatment based on their beliefs goes against everything I care about. And I think that there are ways that treatment providers that I think have experience, right? Because this is one of those things where if you've run into it before, you know what to do. But if you don't, it's actually jarring as the therapist to be in a group and hear another client say that. That there are ways to handle that. You know, the first being, of course, to shut that down and let the person know that we can't control their beliefs. We can let them know that oppressing someone else while in group is equally harmful. And so that's not welcome. Mm-hmm. And if they can't manage that, then they don't need to be in group today. Right. But yep. I mean, at minimum in that moment, we should separate the two parties and do some kind of reparative process as the therapist who was supposed to be holding space for what was supposed to be a safe space, and then kind of figure out what happened. Because that's wild to me that that happened to
Yeah,
someone in treatment, and it sounds like at least they felt like what they needed wasn't tended to, and that's a
right.
problem.
And it was hard to know, like I don't know what happened because we sort of
Yep.
didn't get that. We know that the person wasn't asked to leave, but I would be really curious too, did the facilitator, therapist, whomever was leading that group say anything?
Right, that would be my hope.
Me too.
Like,
Me too.
right, like at minimum we shut it down and we let the person who's being harmed know that that's not the case in this group, and then
Yeah,
deal with the other person not publicly so that we can figure out what's going on.
right. And I would hope too that it's not the case for the entire facility, but I would like
Yep.
to think that a facility and a group facilitator would be able to say, this treatment center is fully aligned with inclusivity,
Yep.
diversity, and we strongly support the LGBTQIA community and our staunch allies. I understand your opinion is different. Um, and in my opinion, I think it would be worth having a conversation with that person outside of group. Is this the right treatment center for you?
Yep. No, I
You know,
agree.
because
And I think it's
it may not be, but to really also let that person know that those beliefs are not welcome, right,
yep.
in the context of that group. And there's so much repair work that needs to be done. I'm thinking, you know, for the person on the receiving end of that horrible statement. And also I wonder, or I think about the other people that are sitting in group that might not have their voice yet,
Yep.
that whether they're part of that community or not, have strong feelings in support of the community, who probably felt very powerless
Yep.
and probably mortified.
Right. I mean, I'm just trying to think, if I was a client sitting in a group like that, even having the voice I have now, I probably wouldn't know what to do in that moment. I'd probably think, wow, I can't come out here. Right. Wow, I can't talk about all these other people in my life. Wow, maybe I'm not ready to recover if that's how I'm reacting right now. So I'm going to imagine there were lots of people in that group that were just like ready to run.
So yeah, there's so many things wrong with that. And I'm thinking about how many different there's it's so hard, I feel like, when you're bringing different groups of folks together, it's so hard to keep it completely safe.
Agreed. I mean, that's why, and I love this, someone had said to me last month when I was doing a training to try and move away from safe in our language and safer, because no space is ever safe for every kind of person. But we can offer a safer space where we let people know what we affirm and what we don't. So if we affirm
Yeah.
queer people, it means if you think queer people shouldn't exist, which is wild to me as a queer person, but I know people believe it, right? Then maybe you don't want to be at our facility in our groups.
Right.
And that's okay. There are lots of facilities that unfortunately believe what this person believes and would happily have them.
It's, you know, it's I'm my brain goes in so many different directions. It's And I've had caffeine today. Doesn't help my focus, but
Same.
I'm like, literally my brain goes over here and over here because there's so many different things where I think, number one, how did that statement even arise in the context of a group? There's nothing recovery oriented about it to start with, right? There's nothing treatment oriented. Like, your opinion
Right?
about a specific group of human beings is is not relevant to to eating disorder care.
Nope. And I'm thinking, right, if there was a care oriented conversation having, someone just shared something really vulnerable about their identity. And the first thing that probably happened was this is what that person was received with, which the amount of harm that happened in that moment, I don't think I can actually accurately express to people,
Oh, yeah.
because you can actually change someone's whole life and whole recovery in that statement.
Mm, it's so problematic. I don't know if you can see Sam's comment. I've been recommended faith-based healthcare from explicitly homophobic providers.
Um,
which is
While I want to be
horrific.
surprised, I'm not. And as always, Sam, whenever you're on any of these and you share things like this, I'm just so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry that people that we have to share a field with, like, just don't know how to be like a human.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking too, like it would be great to talk a little bit about, if for people who are with us this evening who are not part of the LGBTQIA community, but who witness this in the context of a group or in the context of just daily life, how we can be better allies, how we can use our voices.
So, I mean, I want to validate for anybody watching, when you're in group, especially as like clients, it's really hard to stand up to each other. So there are small ways that you can do that, right? If you're in person, you can get up and walk over to the person that has just been harmed and ask if you can sit with them. You can ask permission to rub their back or hold their hand. You can show some kind of physical solidarity. If it's virtual, depending upon what I know, like the messaging on Zoom in my groups, clients can't private chat each other. So publicly chat the person that you support them and you're sorry that that just happened, and ping the facilitator if they're not doing something about it, and stop the group. You're allowed to stop the group if I'm not doing my job and ask me to address something, even if I'm uncomfortable and don't want to, right? That's kind of part of the deal. And that's a hard thing for clients to do, but especially when you're in group therapy, finding ways to show the other person some love and some allyship in an action and asking the group to just process it so we're not dealing with it for weeks on end is always super helpful. In the real world, right? And not that therapy is in the real world, but in the non-treatment world, I should say, I think it's harder because in the treatment world, generally, even if someone has an opinion we don't like, we know that they are a safer person to be around and they're not going to harm us. I think in the real world, what has become scary for people to stand up for marginalized people is that we do not know how far another human being will escalate a situation. So what I encourage people to do is actually to not say anything, but just to walk over the person like you know them and ask them, if they'd like to go for a walk with you. I once saw a woman approach another woman who's being yelled at and be like, I'm so sorry that I'm late for our appointment, even though they clearly were not meeting at Stop and Shop, right? So you can come up with something that isn't true to see if that person wants your intervention. You can record it and you can call 911. And if it's a docile situation, and I always hope that it is, just standing with someone, I can't tell you all the amount of times that I've had clients say, if someone just stood with me, it would have been so much easier. Sometimes we don't have to say anything, just physical presence creates a safer feeling and lets us know people can be there for us. And I think that that can feel really hard because it's scary.
Yeah.
Because attachment is scary.
Being alone in that situation is so horrific. And I love the fact that I love the suggestion of like just physically move yourself
Yep.
to be with that person and show some solidarity physically if you can't say anything.
Yep.
I think sometimes for some people, for some clients and groups, sometimes I think there is that reluctance, right, to do what they think is going to be create like an escalated argument by directing their comments to the person who created the harmful situation by saying something so incredibly horrific like that. I think sometimes it can be easier to just say, wait, can we just stop for a minute and process that? I'm horrified that this became a divisive and I just lost the word out of my head. But to just talk about the situation rather than directing it at the person who made the comment, that can be a little bit easier to stop and to let people know, like, this isn't okay. Like, why are we even talking about this? How did this even come into the conversation?
Well, and as a therapist, I always think like, wow, someone made a comment and they railroaded my entire group and everyone's chance at recovery for that hour by saying such a divisive statement. Let's process why you felt the need to create a power dynamic today.
Oh, that's a great response, actually.
Because isn't that person just controlling the whole group in that statement? That's all they're doing.
Yes. Of course, I'm sitting here thinking like, I mean, my knee-jerk reaction would be to shut that person down, tell them that talk isn't, we're not aligned that way, and kick them out.
I mean,
That's me.
that's what I really want to do all the time, but I'm told that that's not how we help people get better.
Damn it.
No.
Right. Forgot about that part. It's difficult though
It is.
too, because I think there is this space where unfortunately treatment is a privilege, and you don't get to leverage your privilege by annihilating another human.
Right? And
You
yet,
know, um, that,
ugh.
that part's so challenging. I know I just missed a bunch of stuff. Let me scroll back up for a second. Soph is saying that I was in a situation recently where this person was screaming about pronouns, and it was so offensive. And I tried to say something, but I was starting to cry, and I didn't want them to see that.
That I get. I would cry,
Mm-hmm.
especially if
Mm-hmm.
something's loud and volatile and scary. Like, I don't do,
Yeah.
I'm a loud person, but I don't do loud where it becomes scary. I don't like that with other people. It makes me uncomfortable when it's a client, and I'm a therapist. I've been doing this for a long time, and it still is unsettling. I think in that moment, you just kind of have to keep yourself and everyone around you as safe as possible and wait for the person to de-escalate before anybody can do anything. And it's not your job as a client to de-escalate someone who's being a little inappropriate.
Or wildly inappropriate as that may be. Just saying. And Soph said that she ended up leaving the table because she didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And Bree was just reflecting, which is nice. I appreciate Meta's rule that people have to respect pronouns in group. A lot of groups will allow people to misgender others because it was an accident. Actually, could we talk about that for a minute? Because
Yeah.
I do think that there is confusion around how to handle that, because sometimes it is an accident,
Yep.
right? And when it is an accident, it seems, I'm curious about the best way to handle it. My inclination is to, apologize and move forward without perseverating on it, because that seems to make people very uncomfortable.
Yep.
But what is the best way to handle that? And what might be the best way or best feedback? Best is a bad word, but what's some solid feedback that somebody else could provide to somebody who is persistently misgendering someone?
I mean, there's so much there. So, I mean, the deepest part of me as a therapist wants to process with that person. What is it about their identity that brings up something in you that you can't respect or that you can't
Mm-hmm.
move past, right? Because usually when people can't respect our identities or they struggle with it, it's what it brings up in themselves and has nothing to do with the other person, right? Usual therapy stuff, right? But we can't really do that in front of a group of people. Well, then that becomes a whole
Mm-hmm.
thing. So, I mean, often, whether it's a clinician or a client, I kind of give people the boundary that we're going to gently correct someone. We're going to interrupt them in the moment if we can. If it's virtual, we use the chat feature to let the person know we are recognizing they use the wrong pronouns. These are the right ones. As a clinician, because my program's virtual, I'll honestly like private message clients really quickly and ask them, how would you like me to move forward after the correction?
Mm-hmm.
um, because either you want a big process or it's good enough for right now and you want to talk about it with me afterwards, or you want to let it go, right? Everyone's comfort level is different, but the general rule of thumb is to politely correct. And if
Mm-hmm.
someone keeps doing it, then we've got to point out, you've done that 4 times today and you've been corrected 4 times. So now I have to think it's not a mistake.
I like that a lot.
I just think people don't know what they know until they know it. And, again, part of privilege, if you are in a really homogenous space in life, you've never had to say, call someone that looks like me, they, them pronouns. That's going to be very different than if you're around queer people all the time and you've had regular practice and you you watch queer film and you listen to queer music, right? It's different. Which is why I always encourage people to find things that are different than them and consume them, because then you'll not make those mistakes.
Which is such a great, I'm just reading what Bree wrote to us, which in that case, it wasn't an accident. The same woman was doing it repeatedly to the same non-binary person multiple times. So she was able to do a presentation about trans people's struggles, she said, which is great. But even after the presentation, the misgendering continued to happen.
Well, but see, that's where I really feel like treatment programs, you know, in general have to have some level of accountability. And I say this as someone that works for one, right? Where we let it happen so often before it's clearly purposeful and we have documented proof that it's purposeful. And then we figure out whether or not we're the right facility for you. That's how it, because if you're hurting someone, right, we know that specifically harm done by misgendering literally results in your eating disorder getting worse, death by suicide, a substance use issue. So like really I'm being the most unethical by letting this continue past a certain point.
How would you, this, one of the things that I'm thinking about is for somebody who has more newly come out with their pronouns. So people have known them to be either using like she, her, or he, that he, him pronouns for the vast majority of their life. And they just recently said, oh, my, you know, my pronouns are they, them, which is wonderful that they came out. And people are in that space of I've known, and maybe I've known you for 15 years as she, her, for example.
Yep.
And so there's, it's not necessarily purposeful, but there is frequent misgendering.
Yep.
Because it's new.
I mean, that continues to be my own experience in my own personal life, and not to call out any specific family member. I actually don't have any kind of negative feelings, but to me it's really different when it's taking my dad, who's raised me for 30 something years, as his daughter, who's she, her, when he clearly accepts and affirms me, but like really struggles with getting something right, and that's something we have to process and deal with together, than it is someone who sits in a group and clearly keeps doing something purposefully to get a rise out of me or hurt me. So I think learning in the beginning what both look like and knowing how to tell the difference, and then deciding what your own threshold is. Like I tell everyone, I think maybe because I'm a therapist, but also because like, can I curse? I
Yes.
can curse, right?
Oh, yes.
Because like I really don't give a fuck so often that like you say the wrong thing, I might not even notice. I might be like, you know what? I don't even have time to correct you. You are not worth the free education. I need to keep going. We all know I fire at 12 cylinders all the time, right? But that took time. Building up kind of that thicker skin where it didn't hurt took time. And so it's okay in the beginning if someone does it and it makes you weep or it makes you angry, and you're allowed to be hurt, and you're allowed to speak up for yourself, and you're also allowed to say, this feels really uncomfortable, to correct people. Who in my life when they're around can I ask? So like my partner is the corrector, and my partner used to be the person that would slip up when we were in social situations, and there'd be this weird shared shame where I'm like, he didn't mean it the way you all think he did, but now he did it, so it's really awkward for everybody and no one knows what to do because we're married.
It's a beautiful thing.
So I'm just like, y'all, again, married a she, her, lucky him, got a totally different partner in the process, right? So that's a thing, and people also don't get to judge what your family's process is, but ask the people around you. I can name 15, 20 people, some of whom are actually watching right now, who have been some of the greatest allies, who in social situations have reminded people, have texted me under the table out and asked me, hey, should I have corrected that or not? You know?
Nice. This is where I think I'm thinking about the ways in which we can be more supportive and better allies in those situations, so that people don't have to be all on their own to deal with whether it's misgendering or any other type of exclusionary discriminatory practice.
Right. Well, I always ask people, would you behave this way if I was Black? Would you behave this way if I didn't speak English? right? Would you behave this way if? And when you present people with the big things that we all culturally know are a no-no, people know racism is a no-no. I know that so many people are still racist. Don't get me started on that's a whole nother live. But you know what I mean? Like, that's usually the thing where people are like, oh, I would never be racist. And I'm like, well, but what you just did was transphobic. And I believe that you would never be racist. So I also believe that you wouldn't purposefully be transphobic, but do you see the parallel that just happened? And that can be really helpful with the right people.
That is a really great suggestion. I'm going to ask the question before it scrolls up and I forget, because welcome to my brain. Are there virtual programs for trauma, which includes the LGBTQ community? And Bree's asking, she says, I need help, but would prefer virtual.
Oh, that's such a good question.
It is a really good question.
It's a good question, but I don't have the answer that you deserve. The answer is I'm not entirely sure. The trauma programs that I know of that are virtual, I generally wouldn't recommend, but I'm in New Haven, Connecticut, and I'm happy to work with Monika to find you a better answer and maybe even a program.
The only one that I could think of off the top of my head, but it's not virtual, would be Galen Hope.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it's not virtual. If there's a PHP IOP component. Well, this is going to take us some work to figure out.
We're going to figure this out, though. I'm determined. Part 2, Monika and M become FBI agents.
Right.
Let me find all the programs.
It's hard finding a trauma program.
I mean, I was going to say finding a trauma program in general is really difficult. Now, if you have an eating disorder, right, there's 1 or 2 residentials that I would recommend for eating disorder and trauma, for example, that I think are decently queer competent. I've not had a client in them in a long time to know, right? But I don't know many trauma-only programs.
I know not many. You're right.
Which actually, like, hello world, we just went through a pandemic that continues, and now we have another one on top of it. Can we maybe, like, I don't know, get some trauma programs going?
It is pretty amazing when you think about it. There really is very little out there. And at least one of the ones that I know, I don't believe is in a network with anybody.
Oh, Bree just wrote, I would go to anything, but I use a walker and I'm a lesbian, so I don't want to be bullied. As someone who uses a cane and is very genderqueer, I understand completely those barriers, and those barriers are very real.
Yeah, for sure. I have not had anyone at Galen Hope, but just knowing the team down there, it's hard to imagine. I think if there is a safe place, I think that may be it. Yeah. I can't imagine anybody being allowed to get past the second word that might be bullying in that particular facility.
Agreed.
It's worth looking into. And then, yes, I think we will become detectives and see if there's anything else on the planet that exists, because I'm not sure.
Well, see, now I'm like, if nothing exists, who can I call about making it happen?
Right?
It's fine. Bree, I'll just build you a whole program tomorrow.
Which would be amazing. Be totally amazing. I'm always shocked, really, at the lack of trauma resources that are available.
Right? Especially for, like, queer people, BIPOC people, disabled people, like people that experience mass amounts of trauma and barriers.
Yeah.
Like, you would think.
Yeah. And yet, like, it's really awful when you sit here and you're like, how come I can't think of, like, in the entire country? Like, why can I not think of anything? And I just recently had somebody go to a program for trauma that I would not recommend.
Yep. I think that's my problem. Unfortunately. Is often the response is the client had a bad enough experience that I won't even mention them.
Yes, just happened. Just really disappointing, and very unsafe. And that client did happen to be in the LGBTQ community as well. Um, and it, yeah. Oh God, we really do need to build something.
I'm like, can everyone just come live here? Sorry, Ron. Everyone can just come here. We'll just do it right here in my living room.
Rebecca with the case said Princeton House in New Jersey has a good PHP IOP program that was very inclusive. That's for, I'm not actually familiar with them, so that'll be good to look into.
Agreed.
Bree thinks it should be part of Rainbow Road.
I mean, we have trauma groups. We just don't have full trauma programming. But all of our staff are obviously trauma trained. I mean, I don't even know what we say anymore because we all know that I hate the phrase trauma informed because, like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a lot of trauma informed, reportedly, but they're still perpetrating harm.
Yep.
And completely ignoring the things that would be, not traumatic for people who are trauma survivors.
Agreed.
Which I sometimes cannot figure out because when I think about, there's little things that everybody can do that really is very little effort that would reduce trauma so much for people.
But I feel like that's the crux of the issue with all mental health treatment.
Yeah.
Not just eating disorders, like all mental health treatment is like we have these fun phrases for things that did once mean something, but now they're like, if I put it on there, people will show up, right? And not that people are being dishonest, but it's just they feel they are something. And I'm like, well, like if you can't like label a bathroom or if, right, part of trauma informed is actually none of the signs in your office should be directive. Right? So it shouldn't say do not enter or this is not for clients. It should say things like for personnel only, please have a seat if you need something.
Oh God, you're just bringing up this like memory of this one treatment center that I had walked into, and there literally were these like exclusive signs all over the place that literally literally said no patients allowed. Like, what? That's friendly.
Yep.
Welcoming.
Yep.
Does that sign need to be there?
Right. So, I always think if we can't get signs right, getting the treatment right is going to be really hard.
Yeah.
And we're saying all this, and I caveat all that with I'm not perfect. There are plenty of clients out there that I've hurt. There are plenty of clients that are probably mad at me, and that's okay because we are people helping people.
Yeah.
And there are general things that institutions can do to make things safer for people to at least feel like they can access treatment.
Yes. That's the hard thing I think sometimes that people don't understand, right? Is that it's probably impossible to create a practice in which no one is harmed ever, because we also don't know everybody's individual triggers. At some point, somebody is harmed unintentionally, and that needs to be repaired and healed and worked with. It's the stuff that's preventable that is inexcusable, right? The stuff that we know about that still happens time and time and time again by all sorts of lack of policies being instituted properly, by sometimes it's a lack of staff training, and sometimes it's a lack of just competency, right? Because you can train somebody, and if you don't test the competency, that there's a difference. You can sit in a training and walk out and perpetrate lots of harm. Versus sitting in a training being tested and observed for competency. And we know that that person is a little bit safer. I've worked for a company that did a lot with competency, so people had to prove that they knew things.
I mean, I think that's important.
Even then, there are people, though, that could go through they had a very long trauma-informed training, which was great. But there were people who would, it's kind of like studying for a test only. And then, it's like, I know that the day that I'm observed, the person is like doing all of the things that they should be doing and using, they had an acronym that they used for every single meeting that you would have with every single patient to ensure that the beginning part was trauma informed, which talked about the way you acknowledge a patient, the way you introduce yourself, the way that you describe the purpose of what you would be doing together, how long it would last, what they can expect, making sure you thank the person, that whole thing, which is great. So many there, I can't say so many people, there were a number of people though that like studied for a test, got everything right for the competency portion, and then just kind of when the door was shut did whatever they did, and you know, sort of find out about it later, which I don't understand. As a human being, I don't understand that.
Agreed.
Veronica's saying they give us trauma-informed training at the beginning of every year as teachers, and it's pretty much just, hey, students might have lived through some trauma. That's, I feel like that's not very informative.
Well, no, let's not even talk about teachers being traumatized or how traumatic a lot of the drills and things that we have to do are. There's nothing that's trauma-informed.
Yeah, for sure. And the whole, it's, the whole country is really challenging right now with like what teachers might be allowed to say and might not be allowed to say and all this.
Correct.
And it does not help what we're talking about tonight at all. Makes it
Well,
all
no,
harder.
I think we're all living in perpetual fear on one level or another, whether it's what you can say at your job, what you can do with your job, what you can say about yourself, what you can't say about yourself, how you're supposed to act, how you're not supposed to act, right? I mean, I got a notification today from one of the licensing boards from one of the states that I'm licensed in that I am not legally allowed to talk about certain gender affirming care topics should I be seeing a minor from that state. But that's what I do for a living. That's literally my job. So I just can't see minors from that state, which is a shame.
It's so sad. There are so many barriers,
Yep.
unnecessary barriers.
And I mean, and I think, Monika, you know this, and for those of you watching that know me, we all know that I'm a little crazy with a capital K, and I have no problem being scared and wearing orange for a little while if it means I said the thing that I actually believe in. And so I often in this environment kind of am like, well, I have to watch myself because I know I don't have a problem with that, and I'm not serving anybody by potentially being arrested and losing my license because
Right.
I didn't do the care you deserved. Like, it's a little, when you think about it, right, as we're talking, as people are watching this, we're talking about this right now. It's 2022, and I want no one to have an eating disorder anymore, and we still have to be as careful about what we've said as we've ever been before. And then we wonder why people aren't getting better, because we can't talk about the things that need to be talked about.
It is it my imagination, or is it actually getting worse?
It is.
Because yeah, I was having this conversation, a similar conversation. So most people that are in the MEDA community know I'm old. So I'm old. Um, and so my mom's gay, and so I grew up with two moms, and she divorced my dad early on in life when I was 6, which is fine. I joke that I collect mothers. And so, you know, I was young in the 70s. So my daughter has a lot of grandmothers. She's very lucky that way. I think about the discrimination that happened in the 70s, you know, like our house being targeted and property damage and threats, and, you know, my mom not being able to just show love openly to the person that she loved, you know, and then her joy and the joy of her partners over her life when they were able to legally marry and just, you know, sort of be more open, not have to worry about losing a teaching job, having the staff at the school, that there's one school that they both worked at together, and, you know, just be really openly accepting. And then all of a sudden it's sort of watching them feel like they're losing everything. going back to, is our house going to, or their house going to be targeted again? Are they going to be hurt?
Yep.
Are they going to lose? It's insane to me. Like it's
Well,
like you said, it's 2022. Like we
and I
thought it
mean,
was bad in 1970, whatever. It's like, how?
that was terrible. And what's terrible is that it happened then and it keeps happening and it hasn't actually changed. And now we're being given more reason than ever for it to not change. And I think what I struggle with as a provider is so often, how can I expect you to finish lunch when you don't even know if your house is going to be safe tomorrow? How can I expect you not to do the behaviors that make you feel better in a world that's taken away every other way to feel better? Like, it's such a big ask that I am asking of people in such impossible circumstances.
Yes. Like you don't know if you're going to be safe in any
Yep.
capacity.
And I
But here's
mean,
your PB&J.
right. And I mean, I empathize with clients, and I think, in some ways, having lived experience is so incredible. And in some ways, it's probably a disservice to me more than our clients, because I'm over here like, someone build a fence in my yard this week. I'm done. I just so everyone knows, I've never owned a fence in my life. I do not believe in them in any way. And yet, this will be the first time ever.
Mm.
Because we need to.
I think so often, I mean, I've thought this stuff since I was like, I don't know, 5, 6. There
Yeah.
just has to be more we can do to make this world safe for people. The current climate is really challenging. And I keep, going like, wait, it's supposed to be 2022.
Yep.
It feels like worse than in the 70s in places.
I mean,
How does that happen?
let's see. My mom remembers Jim Crow and
Mm.
my dad. And my dad has said that what has changed is how many are the other, not that the othering has changed.
Say that one more time.
That the difference between then and now is the how many that are being othered, not that the othering itself has changed. Right? The bathroom debate is the same debate that we've been having the whole time. The water
Yeah.
fountain, the team sport debate, and racism is still rampant even though we can use the same water fountain and bathroom. So we only did it half right. We only fixed it part of the way, such a small part of the way. If you can keep repeating the same mistake with every other marginalized group, you haven't solved anything. You just pass the buck.
The way that was stated was so good and so sadly true.
Yep.
It's amazing to me sometimes when I think about the lack of progress,
Right?
lack of meaningful progress.
I think that's exactly accurate. But everybody, make sure you have night snack tonight.
Yes.
Right? Like seriously, I want you all to eat extra night snack for me. And at the same time, if tonight is hard, there's a reason why tonight is hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's so hard, right? I'm thinking about the ask about, making sure for people to nourish themselves well. It's so hard, right? Because food is in part a basis for connecting with ourselves emotionally. And so many people with eating disorders, you can use food in either direction, right? To try to just get some space from emotions that feel overwhelming. Whether you're eating to get space or whether you're restricting to get space,
Yep.
nourishing yourself and really being gentle with yourself and taking care of yourself when there's pain present is really hard. And yet it's the beginning of healing at the same time.
Actually, I think what you're saying is the solution to a lot of this, which is we get to take up space. Your moms get to take up space. You
Mhm.
get to, I get to take up space. All of you watching and listening take up space. And every time we shrink ourselves away in one way or another, we actually are letting the people that would rather see us not here, whether not here because of your identity, because of your kindness, because of your softness, because of your loud, whatever your ness is that people don't want to see, right, is probably what we need more than ever. So, I mean, as someone who's in very active recovery and doing this work, I say to people all the time, like, it's going to be a late night for dinner, and I could very easily just have a snack and go to bed and not do the thing. But tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up and take up space again. So I have to eat times that feel stupid, and that's okay.
Yeah. And knowing, well, I'm not going to say that actually because it's probably not true. Never mind. I was about to talk about the temporariness of certain things, but it's not everything is temporary, and there's always the exception to that rule. And I think that there's long-term suffering for some people, and that's really a hard thing.
Agreed.
But not nourishing yourself doesn't make that suffering any easier in the long term.
No, it usually does. As everyone who's had an eating disorder knows, irreparable long-term harm that you cannot know until you're older. And I tell everybody, if someone had told me then what I know now, both as a therapist and as a human being, I'd probably still had an eating disorder. I just would have probably gotten recovery, gotten treatment, gotten whatever I needed a different way sooner. And that's true for most.
Yeah, it is true. Like the stuff that ends up happening later on in life, you're like, oh, I had no idea that could happen. And that's where my F bombs start coming in.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, it does that? Fuck. But like I mean, I do think if somebody had said that to me, number one, until I was like, I don't know, 27, I think I thought I was immortal. So like nothing was going to happen to me, right? But, hopefully it would have been shorter than it was. But hopefully, or not but, and because of that, hopefully we can be there for other people to encourage them to have different long-term outcomes.
Right? I mean, so my mom was like a really good mom. I say this to people all the time. I get emotional whenever I talk about her because she was like such a just the goodest human, and I feel so grateful to have had her. I can remember being bullied about my appearance and my identity and coming home from school and being so sad, and her telling me like, you can be so sad and you can be anxious and depressed, and we're going to sit here and we're going to feel those things and we're going to move through it. And then when you're done, you are going to go out there and figure out what makes you happy, and you're going to do it, because every time you're happy, all those people that did that to you lose.
Mm.
And so, like today was rainy and cold, and I was grumpy and miserable all day. But I'm going to end my day still being happy and grateful for what I have, because I know that every time I am happy, every time I experience joy, every time I do not make fun of my own body in my head, I win a little bit more.
That is so true. And such a powerful statement. And it's really, in some ways, right, the way to reclaim some of your power, to be there for yourself no matter what. To not abandon ourselves or walk away from ourselves when we're hurting. And to still find those cracks or spaces where joy can come in.
Which, depending upon how many of those you get, can feel increasingly hard. And I firmly believe they're there for us.
Yeah. Just going to scroll up for a sec. I see Sam wrote something. there's a lot of power in talking to people around you with whom you have shared values about issues like racism and transphobia. It's very hard to do, but people tend to respond to empathy more than shame in getting them to change their minds. It's a really great point. It's a really great point.
Agreed.
And in general, right? Nobody really does well with shame.
I was going to say shame is something that we actually don't need as a culture, but we capitalize on it specifically in westernized culture as a way to get people to do what we want them to do. It only ever harms ourselves more than anything.
It's true. Nobody responds well to it. It's interesting because I mean I think of like shame-based parenting back in the day, right? Like if you make your kids feel ashamed enough, they'll behave. Not really.
Right?
Not really.
Or your child behaved out of fear of you, and I mean, I'm going to assume, Monika, that you would not want a child to be afraid of you. I would not want any child to be afraid of me. Like, I would be devastated.
It's heartbreaking to think, right? That if anything, like you want to be the child's safe person, the safe space,
Yeah,
and the soft space to land. Always have your back no matter what, kiddo.
right. That should always be our role. And
Yeah.
I mean, but with all things, right? Time evolves, and we learn that the things that we once thought were good, maybe not so much, and there are better ways to do them.
Mm-hmm.
And every generation we get left with a little bit of mess of what happened before and a lot of bit of mess of what we're doing now.
Yup. Quite a mess. I'm surprised to see it in this current state, but we have a lot of work to do.
We do.
I'm hopeful, especially with the younger generation, the youngest generation, which has been really surprisingly strong.
Yeah, these kids are wild in the best way possible. Like,
Yeah.
part of me that's like, I was born either too late or too early. I don't know which one, but like, I'm with y'all when you're ready to go out and do the thing.
Yeah. There's a lot of those, it's Gen Z, right? I don't know. There's so many generations, but a lot of their value systems just really, really, like they were born with them. It's great.
Yep.
And so many people in other generations like mine can learn a lot from them.
And we all just remembering all people are capable of change.
Yes. Yes. And hopefully we will be moving in that direction. Took a few steps back over the last couple of years. But, tell us we can't do something and we'll do it anyway.
What was it? A friend of mine the other day to remember that some things die with a whisper and other things die with a scream.
Mm.
So I'm like, this is the loud scream, and whatever is born next for all of us is this is my super hopeful side, y'all. Right? I'm like, okay, it's gonna be so queer friendly, so body friendly, so everything friendly that we're honestly not gonna know what to do with ourselves when we're there.
I love that.
And if it doesn't happen, I need to believe deeply for all of us that it will.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, I love that so much. God, this has been great.
Oh, thank you. What a wonderful way to end my evening.
I was just thinking the same. I feel I'm super lucky. I could hang out with you and talk forever, as you know.
Get chocolate peanut butter ice cream cones and hang out with the dogs. And
I'm in. That sounds good. My dog is like MIA tonight. Usually she's got herself wrapped around like my hips.
Right.
Or occasionally will show up in groups right here.
Here we go. This is Pinball.
Oh,
He is
my
a little
goodness.
blind rescue baby.
sweetest ever.
And he wants the thing that I think all human beings want. He just wants a secure attachment figure, to know when he's going to be fed, and to know that I'm coming home.
That, you're right. That's exactly what all human beings want too.
Right?
The perfect family member.
Oh, I know, buddy. I love you so much.
What a cutie. Well, Sam, I just saw that message and now I'm totally curious. Whenever somebody realizes something important, right?
Yeah. You're like, oh.
This has been great.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
You know, I'm already calculating. I'm like, how much time do I have to go by before I can bug them again? At least I'm honest.
I mean, I appreciate that instead of people that like kind of pussyfoot around like, do you know when you might be free? I just like, I have this idea and I'm just like, no, ask me, I'll probably say yes. I'd love to. Ask me.
I'll let you have a break from me for a little bit and then I'll be back like, hey, I got this other thing. You want to do this?
I probably
It'd be fun.
Honestly, I probably do. This is my idea of a good time.
I love doing this stuff. It's like, I'm so lucky in so many ways.
That's how
Yeah, this has been amazing. And so I look forward to getting to not only hang out with you again, but also just be working alongside you, learning from you, supporting you, and our whole community as well.
Thank you. I feel very lucky to have so many people be so receptive to all the musings in my brain.
They're pretty incredible. Like, you probably don't give yourself enough credit. I also I don't know if yeah, it's fine. I was like, wait, can I say this? I think I can say this. I was just thinking about like, before you went on to do the end note, you were maybe a little bit nervous. And
you have no idea how nervous I was. None of you see it. What I will do is I will introduce you to Ron, and you can ask him what it looks like, which is me going, I think I'm gonna be sick. I don't think this is good enough. Should I rewrite the whole thing? Should I say this? Maybe I should edit this. And then he's like, breathing is a thing. Like, this might go well. You're good. Fine. And then usually he says something snarky because that's our relationship. He goes, I mean, worst comes to worst, everyone will stare at your outfit. No one will care what you say. And then I'm like, yeah, at least I dress good. And then I'm like ready to go.
I remember when you were walking by the MEDA window and you did look a little bit nervous in that moment. And I was like, don't worry, you can go on stage and fart and everyone will love you. That's all you have to do. And then the best part about it, right, is knowing that like literally everybody did. You literally got 100% from everyone. So I hope that you can tuck that in with you somewhere another time when maybe you're feeling nervous or anything along those lines, to just know that you being you is amazing and that you really do make this world a better place. And I feel really blessed that we get to learn from you and spend time with you and support you.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Gonna have feelings later.
And that I get to bug you, so that's fun.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for sharing yourself and your time and your knowledge and your everything with us tonight. So appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
And I hope you have an amazing rest of the week.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. And for everybody else, if you happen to be around, Ruth is running our drop-in group tomorrow night at 7. So if you're free, drop in. Registration's on our calendar. And if you don't follow M, please follow them. queer.art_therapist.
Yep.
It's a good count. So make sure you follow. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.